have celebrities to talk to, like Moby.
Celebrities, huh? So celebrities are more important than the safety and well-being.
Nobody cares, Moby. Nobody cares.
Let my honey come back. Sometime I'm on a red back jack. Sometime I get a hump in my back. Sometime I'm going over here. Sometime let my honey come back. Sometime I'm on a red back jack. Sometime I get a hump in my back. Sometime I'm going over here. Sometime.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to one of those special anniversary episodes of the Thom and Joe show. I'm Joe.
I'm Tom.
And we have a very special one, not for its topic, but for what it means to me and why we're talking about it. We are here today to talk about Moby's play, and, Moby has not exactly made the best headlines lately. Either from his book or when he doesn't take Space Ghost advice every 1 or 2 years. Just says something and just, ridiculously disconnected from the rest of the world. And
he also hasn't made, frankly, the best records for the last, your mileage may vary on Moby, basically.
Your mileage may vary, and Pitchfork has never liked him, and we'll get into that. Like, I think his best of CD got a 6.9. I don't think people at Pitchfork were allowed
to like Moby
go up to a 7.
Yeah,
you are not allowed to rate a Moby album a 7.
No.
But
we'll put him at
the thing is, it's the Barnes & Noble crowd, and Barnes & Noble hasn't been in financially good shape for decades.
Nope. No, okay. So a little bit. So this is, you say this isn't like a big album. This album is huge. This album is fairly monumental in both of terms in an industry way, if not in a in an industry way, certainly, if not a critical way, I feel. This album, as we'll come on to talk about, basically changed how music, and particularly electronic music, kind of basically got marketed, and how popular music got released, and how you market a record, I feel.
Yes. For better or for worse, if there are songs these days by up-and-coming artists that you heard from commercials, this is likely Moby's fault.
You can blame Moby for this. Yeah. So I feel we need to sort of literally go back a little bit to sort of who is Moby?
Yes. Robert Melville Hall.
Yeah. And yes, Melville, yes, okay, so let's get this is one of the things that Moby, I feel Moby is like a guy who I feel plays
Richard
up a
Melville
lot.
Hall, excuse me, I made a mistake. Richard Melville Hall. My ADHD grabbed the name next to the one I wanted.
Yeah, Moby tends to Moby builds up a little bit of his own mystique, because Moby, obviously the name Moby obviously riffs off Moby Dick. He is questionably related to obviously Herman Melville. He is definitely related to David Melville, who invented, what was it, Joe?
Okay, hold on, let me go. Okay.
David Melville. Which is
David Melville, inventor of the the first patented gaslight system for lighting, which
it's like the Trent Reznor
gaslighting.
Gaslighting.
That will come into play in his story later.
It's like Trent Reznor being the grandson of the guy who created Reznor radiators, a loud metal thing that sits in all of your houses. Yeah, that's a little bit more of a tenuous link, but anyway. Yeah, Moby sort of obviously, what was so obviously he is one of these electronic musicians that was like around in from the early 90s, because obviously by the early 90s, like, electronic music is kind of all over the has grown from obviously a lot of stuff to this electronic music sort of has obviously from the 90s onwards has become or from the early 90s onwards has become a major part of the the rock and alternate sort of landscape, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, he was a pioneer of a lot of this, pretty much literally, just because of where he was and what he was doing at the time. I believe his father died in a car accident, so he was raised by a single mother in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And so broke his shit all the time. And eventually that led him into getting into the scene of electronic production. Eventually he got a factory in Connecticut where he worked out of. And then he got into the punk scene.
Yeah,
he was a member of a lot of punk bands in the 1980s.
Including, very briefly, Kurt Cobain's beloved band, one of Kurt Cobain's favourite bands, Flipper, where he was the vocalist for 2 days, and has more recently played bass on their reunion shows, because that was what punk music was like in the 1980s. United States, it was 300 people all in each other's bands.
And he had an appearance of much more of a punk person at the time, but then he decided to explore his sound a little bit, and then he got into the early club life of the 1980s and early house and early ambient and a lot of electronic stuff. He actually started recording out of his house, and then once he got signed to a label, they tried to make him go to the studio, and then he's like, no, I like my house better. And he's one of the people who didn't go into the studio. He went back into his house, and that's where he records all of his stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of obviously. So obviously he then breaks through with a remix of a track "Go," which is from his first. I think there's obviously this is the point. Obviously, this thing with electronic music, a lot of electronic music, eventually on another episode we may talk about Aphex Twin, who obviously does, a lot of it is basically single. Oh, I suppose I can do an album. And Moby released a track called "Go."
Yes, and it relates to one of the most referenced people on our podcast, David Lynch. Because Go snatches a sample of a theme from Twin Peaks.
Yep.
And Laura Palmer's theme. It's the one you will have heard and recognized the most if you've watched Twin Peaks, because it is used a whole lot from the beginning to near the end. And Moby says on his album I Like to Score that it was used in Firewalk with Me, his track Go. I don't think that's true. I've watched Firewalk with Me. I did not hear Go as a track in Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me.
I think maybe misremembering things. It's actually curiously David Lynch is also credited alongside the late Angelo Badalamenti on songwriting of this. So Moby pays David Lynch a not inconsiderable amount of money for every year for this. Although apparently this did not get him a lot of royalties, probably because you've got David Lynch and Badalamenti obviously as co-writers on this.
And also, David Lynch would become a collaborator later. He is post Hotel Moby. David Lynch has worked on an album with Moby and directed one or more of his videos. Yeah. So there is that. The the sucky Moby is also involved David Lynch. So there that is. But then again, David Lynch does a lot of things. Most people just aren't looking because he's not doing a movie.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
He's not doing the movie you want him to, or the projects you want him to, like interviewing a monkey about a murder.
Yeah, it's David Lynch. David Lynch goes at his own pace, I think, is the general thing. So Moby obviously releases his debut album. You know, this is that sort of thing. There's an interesting thing with sort of like, you know, who Moby is sort of headlining for and collaborating with, which I think is sort of typical for sort of electronic musicians of this period. So, you know, he opens so obviously he does his first US tour for the in front of the as the opening act for the Scottish band The Shaman. He then does tours with, you know, The Prodigy, etc., etc. And, you know, he's obviously releasing, you know, ambient techno and other things. He then gets into a peculiar feud, actually speaking of Aphex Twin, with Aphex Twin, because Moby doesn't like Aphex Richard James, D. James, sort of smoking in his thing. Yeah. So proceeds to basically travel the tour separately. I mean, Richard D. James is a very odd man, but sort of like the idea of Moby being sort of put out by him smoking rather than anything else Aphex Twin does.
Yeah. Well, he was also in the punk scene, but also he is a vegan, and he is all about like
animal rights,
being kinder, animal rights, taking care of the world, and taking care of mostly, I mean, himself. Like he has a mishmash of religion. He describes as like Taoist, Christian, agnostic, whatever else, I don't know. But he writes a lot of essays, and he did write a lot about these things when in his albums. Like the liner notes are a lot of his essays about his thoughts on life and stuff, and you know, they go up and down, and they would predict what he does later in life, like especially like being pointed at his audience, which he supposedly learned not to do on his essays for play, but that is not so much true later on. Yeah,
he does tend to be apparently he has an eidetic memory, because apparently, like, obviously a lot of the two books that he's written, which are essentially I think best described as memoirs, are like, you know, absurd levels of detail. Apparently he just does not forget anything. The sort of I suppose this obviously takes us, so Moby obviously changes labels to Elektra and Mute in the US or UK, continues to release albums, kind of gets to a point of like critical acclaim, and then he releases Animal Rights.
Critical. I feel we shouldn't skimp over that. Everything Is Wrong. It was considered one of the albums of the decade for the 90s by a lot of people, because it was it's a lot of mishmashing, punk, house, and you know, whatever else he had lying around from his influences. But it kind of brought house to a critical audience, because at the time it was a lot of, you know, La Bouche and, you know, the head bopping stuff, you know, What Is Love and Baby Don't Hurt
Me. So Hadaway. So you know, we got to consider when are we talking, Joe? I mean, we're talking 95, 96, so obviously our two friends from Paris are yet to appear on the scene and basically turn house music on its head. So we are sort of like, you know, Franco House is yet to
brought it to critical acclaim. At least, you know, the Entertainment Weekly version of critical acclaim, because they're the ones who, anytime they have a best of lists, they mentioned this album during the 90s.
And that's fair.
It is thoughtful house a lot of the time. I mean, a lot of it is like, you know, you're on drugs, you're in a club, and you're dancing and feel good music. But a lot of it is Moby being lonely and like yelling directly into a mic with a seriously threatening beat in the background, and ambient stuff that works on a level, and just like house music that like makes you think for at least 5 seconds, which is more than house. So it was a big critical hit. What it didn't make in album sales, it would make in street cred, because a little known filmmaker, stumbled over Moby and used a couple of his tracks in a movie called Heat. The director was Michael Mann, and
you may have heard of.
You may have heard of Michael Mann and the movie Heat, which is not the other movie called Heat from the late 80s, early 90s. And that, increases his street cred radically. But then we have right when he's about to break through, he releases Animal Rights, which was a seriously return to his punk roots. Extremely angry, extremely rough. And if you didn't like the Moby is an upset man yelling into the microphone parts of Everything Is Wrong, well, brother, you're not going to like this album. Yeah. Because it is all that.
And it is fair to say, look, Moby has, and obviously as play proves to an absolute T, Moby's sort of always has had one foot in the rock camp. A lot of the stuff is obviously when we come to talk about play, the record is, it is rockier. The guy obviously plays, multiple instruments. He is, he essentially he's always had, but this is like taking, obviously Moby has built a reputation on balancing these two elements in this, and this is like basically aggressive guitar punk covers of 80s post punk, and it bombs, it bombs, and it is kind of painful, and obviously surprisingly enough Moby tours this, bizarre enough with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Soundgarden, and Moby I think has said at the time, of interviews at the time, I'm playing to about 50 people. This is obviously I'm not doubting there is a microcosm of Moby's I guess fan base at this point who goes, yeah, we just like everything you put out, but this is basically he has essentially set his career on fire. Because also he's obviously got bored with the electronic scene. Now that's another one. He didn't want to do house anymore. No.
It was kind of an early version of an album we've already talked about, when DJ Shadow got tired of making the sampled, songs for the critics to get praise of. He wanted to go back to his scene and whatever else he liked, and then he released The Outsider, which we have discussed in a previous episode, and
great album.
It was like somewhat what he used to do, but then once you get to track 3 or so, it's oh, this is nothing like he did.
Yeah, and it's basically DJ Shadow acting as beat maker for sort of dirty South hip hop, and it is glorious, and it's not
glorious and fun. And then it goes to indie rock, it goes to ambient, it goes everywhere else except what his audience expected of him, and which is probably for the best, because after that the sample laws got really restricted. All of the songs where you would have expected the sample have gotten significantly worse. The album where Nobody Speaks from
The Mountain Is Fallen
is the only good song on that album. The only one that isn't just crushingly empty.
That's what happens when you get Run the Jewels on a track. Anyway, so despite this, Moby sort of basically goes, he has this sort of moment of basically commercial suicide. And then he goes, actually, do you know what? No, I'm gonna do some more house music, and he releases kind of what is the prelude to this. And I feel like this is like the record where everyone should have like sat up and gone, that's what he's doing, which is I Like to Score.
And I Like to Score is what he's been doing to prop up his career, which is doing a lot of songs for soundtracks. And I will tell you, if you want a Moby album, you get I Like to Score, because they're the best version of all of his songs. And I feel we have to rewind, well, maybe not that far, but go to where I come into this story. Because I have... I was kind of into electronic because my natural sleeping time is like 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. And it has been for a long time, even with school. Like, I was forcing myself to get up at 8 a.m. to go to school, and then, you kind of force yourself into a regular schedule. But once summer hit, like, that schedule was gone. I was staying up, and really the only thing I could watch was MTV at the time. And they would, at like 1 to 3 a.m., they would have music videos, just all music videos of whatever. And that's where I got a lot of my music taste from. And then at like 4 or 5 a.m., they would have their specific channels, or channels for stuff that isn't popular. Like, they would have AMP, which is the important thing, which is their electronica, techno stuff, using 90s terms. And that's where I would get a little bit of my taste, but I wouldn't have specific bands until the 1997, I don't want to call it the album, but the soundtrack to The Saint.
Yeah. On which Moby appears.
Of which Moby appears. But I'm just going to tell you about this because this is where a lot of my 90s taste comes from. Here are the artists on here. Orbital, Sneaker Pimps, then we have Moby, and we have Fluke, which isn't a well-known band, but you've heard their song Atom Bomb, which is what is on this soundtrack. It is like one of the most influential songs for anime techno nerds like myself, because it was an early American version of anime that these people had watched this and wanted to make a music video that was just like it.
Atom Bomb appears, by the way, on like a bit of a crossover thing on the soundtrack of Wipeout 2097. Yeah, there is also a lot of these guys are, things like Orbital, Sneaker Pimps, etc. are also on that soundtrack on Wipeout many soundtracks.
Wipeout, which is like it's not F-Zero, but it's F-Zero if you had a PlayStation, is the best way we can describe that.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
And then we have Luscious Jackson, who's kind of a one-hit wonder and did With My Naked Eye, which is it is a bop. Listen to it if you haven't. But then we go back to like all of these bands that influenced stuff: the Chemical Brothers, Underworld, the '90s version of Duran Duran, Daft Punk. The 90s version of David Bowie. And,
who's very into electronics.
We have other more obscure people, and we have Duncan Sheik, who is also kind of a one-hit wonder. He's the oddity that he's one of the pop's like stars at the time that's on this. And then Everything But the Girl, who the only people I would think were missing on this are Massive Attack.
Who probably would have said no. Also,
like a full. It would almost be the full set of things. So this was an influential album of who I would listen to and where my taste would go after this. And from this, I did get. There was the movie Tomorrow Never Dies at the end of 1997, the Bond movie, and it had Moby remixing the James Bond theme. So I was totally into my Bond phase. So I pursued more Moby through that, and I Like to Score, which, again, if you want a Moby album, it is his best mixes from the tightest, like, specifically, we are making this song the best it can be, and we're putting it on this album.
Yeah.
And it is a pretty great like album of like early mid 90s Moby if you want to check that out, or don't because you think he's a shit of a person. That is
we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that.
The other band that are on that film but aren't on the soundtrack are the 90s version of the late 90s version of the Smashing Pumpkins, who have also gone into electronic music. And of course, Joe, it's worth saying that obviously the next Bond film, The World Is Not Enough, would also feature a major 90s electronic band doing the theme song, which are of course Garbage, who we've also talked about.
We've talked about their album version 2.0, which is great, and everybody should listen to it if you haven't.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Moby.
So, he and his manager have this little plan, and they had this stuck out all along because he's been doing the soundtracks. It's like, why not sell everything you're doing to and license it to everybody who asks, like commercial soundtrack people, whomever else. And that is part of the plan for his next album, Play, which is influenced and directly sampled by an album of field music. I mean, to put it bluntly, slave songs.
They are. So they're field recordings collected by a American ethnomusicologist called Alan Lomax. Essentially, what they are, as I said, they are a collection. Obviously, he starts to collect his. Basically, he obviously collects field recordings and which is sort of and obviously you got to remember this guy is also the guy who brought Woody Guthrie to sort of prominence, because obviously he is controlling RCA at that point, and Lead Belly's The Midnight Special and other Southern Prison songs. This guy is not just a guy going around with a tape recorder. This guy is like a really major figure in the popular, in going into the sort of the backwaters of the United States, or places where folk music, and obviously he does, as part of this, he obviously records a series of field recordings, obviously called Sounds of the South, a musical journey from the Georgia Sea Islands to the Mississippi Delta. And this is sort of like, basically, it is most of the music is obviously collected a cappella. Obviously it's what I suppose we would now call it in the common musical vernacular, blues music, and obviously to an extent gospel. And obviously attaching hip hop to gospel is not a new thing. It's it's as old as the medium itself.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry.
So it's an interesting thing because I think multiple people got to this, but I think Moby was the one who made it popularized because it was in everything. Yeah. Because about 2 months after this album was released, there was a soundtrack to a movie called The General's Daughter, which is a very forgettable John Travolta. Like, it was made to be controversial because the General's Daughter was involved in S&M, and then she was murdered, and that everybody is bringing up, oh, she was in a BDSM stuff and blah blah blah, but it actually hides a military conspiracy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was mostly forgotten, but the soundtrack, 2 months after Play, also is a bunch of this techno combined with field songs and gospel and blues. So this, I don't know if everybody on the scene just got it at once. I tried to find the General's Daughter soundtrack story, but nobody cares because it was a movie that made a decent amount of money and left. And it got some okay reviews. It got some really poor reviews, but so I don't know the story, but that came 2 months after, and it was just under the surface. Not a lot of these things didn't have a whole bunch of success. Even Play itself didn't have a whole lot of success, and then it did. Sort of, you started hearing it everywhere, and then the album exploded in popularity.
Yeah, so I think we need to go back a little bit. So obviously, Moby again, I don't know if this is Moby, building on the legend. This is sort of, basically he starts recording this in August of 1997, and he basically goes, late March 1999, obviously, basically about 2 months before the record comes out, and he kind of basically goes, I think this is going to be my last album. Obviously, to what extent, he regarded this, and it comes out to basically the sort of sonic equivalent of a shrug. It's sort of like, it's, it sells. I think here we go. So it sells. So it opens at 33 on the UK albums chart, but basically just drops off the thing. His first basically play of it in the United States, which is in the basement of a Virgin Megastore in Union Square in New York, attended by 40 people, and it kind of just it sits there, and it's sort of, it's doing small band, in the 90s sort of turnover. And then it starts to build. It's it basically so obviously the genius of it is that Moby has basically gone, from a marketing perspective, Moby has basically gone, I am gonna sell every single track on this album for advertising purposes, and it's surprising. Like, I don't know whether, because obviously a lot of people looked at who I Like to Score and went, do you know what, this is really decent stuff, or whether Moby's agent just played an absolute blinder with this, or whether people were listening. People obviously from a marketing perspective were listening to this album and going, do you know what, this is really good, but we this will be good in like 30-second segments underneath an advert for, because this gets used for everything. I think is well.
I don't know. I tried to make a complete list. I kind of gave up halfway through.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Because it's everywhere, and it's stuff like I kind of remember, but I kind of don't, and it's just like, okay, enough of this. I gotta do other things with my life.
Yeah. Somebody's tried to do it, and it goes to like 300-400 entries. This is insane. Like, they basically they got to a point where I think the last track of the album which they hadn't marketed was 7, which is just basically, as we'll come to talk about 7 like later, it's one of the most, it's basically a wisp of a song. It's sort of like they basically, this fax comes in from the BBC and just goes, can we use 7 in this program, and they pop a bottle of champagne because that is the last track on the album that hasn't been licensed. And this sort of basically, because this album is omnipresent, like as a sonic background, it kind of starts to sell.
And
it sells a lot.
Really sells, and it eventually becomes the highest-selling electronica album of all time.
Yeah. So basically, so Moby, this is Moby, obviously in a couple of years, obviously looking back in hindsight. The week Play was released, it sold worldwide about 6,000 copies a week. This is basically, obviously this is the first week. 11 months after the Play was released, it was selling 150,000 copies a week. That's just nuts. Like this, I think the overall sales of this are somewhere in the region of 12 to 14 million copies. It is the biggest selling electronic album of all time.
And then I suddenly got a phone call saying we don't have to worry about money no more. I said, well, that's good. One less thing to worry about.
Yeah. Have we got anything really more in the thing of it? Or, I mean, obviously there's also like the film that he shoots, which is just the DVD, which obviously got nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah, I tried to find my copy of the DVD. I think I gave it away to Goodwill at one point. In one of my, I don't really need all of this stuff. I need to give it away, and then I get more stuff once I realize, oh, physical media is disappearing, and the people who are controlling our shit are making stuff you can't. So stuff that was even popular that you can't see anymore. So now I'm back to like keeping everything in a Rubbermaid bin and in the basement, and I can look, but it's precarious, and I have not gone to my Rubbermaid bins without like causing a gigantic crash in the basement, and some people from other apartments going down. It's like, everything okay down there? It's like, fine.
Yeah, but so obviously this album gets like 8 singles like released of it, of which 6 track thing. The most notable sort of non-album track in a way is a remix of Southside, which features obviously Gwen Stefani. I genuinely can't find anything about why this initially didn't have Gwen Stefani on it. I think the only
I think I found a little bit that they originally recorded it with Gwen Stefani and was going to go with the album, but then Moby didn't like it enough when they the original mix and took her vocals off. And then when it got a bigger hit later, they made a new mix of it and then sold it as a single. So, but the version with Gwen Stefani is not the one on the album. No. It is just the separate single, and I wish I liked it. I don't know. It's like a lot of Gwen Stefani on other people's stuff. I don't know what it adds. Now, I like Gwen Stefani. I like No Doubt. It's just like a lot of her collaborations I just don't get at all.
Yeah, and that's fair. And obviously Moby also, I mean, this is the sort of scale of this album. Moby also releases the B-sides as a separate record. And that goes to number 14 on the US electronic out charts, which should indicate how big this thing had become at this point. That Moby can package the B-sides, release them, and have them chart in the top 40 for the electronic music charts.
Which is mostly just Flower, the song he used in Gone in 60 Seconds, and a bunch of songs that feel like half completed, or they had one good thing about them and then they kind of trail off, or the good part happens at the end. Because I listened to the B-sides like once in 1999 and then never listened to them again until now, and then I listened to them again and it's just like, oh, maybe these aren't as bad, and then you just hear like the beat or the keyboard is really good, but there's nothing else to it. And there are a lot of people who would say there's nothing to it to begin with. It's just Moby on a MIDI keyboard putting a beat, noodling and putting beats under other people's music, like again popularizing black music. But there is something to play the tracks that did make it. There is something more to it. I mean, they are simple in a house way. Like, they are simple but addictive. And that and that would be a lot of play. I mean, there's a lot of texture that adds to it and makes it feel like it's more, but it is addictive and kind of fun, and it's infinitely listenable.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Obviously we're gonna try and talk track by track, but this thing as a whole is there is, for an album which is basically quite eclectic in its sound, it is remarkably well sequenced. I will say that.
Yeah, it is. Tight and compact, and it feels like it has everything it needs. People like Pitchfork would say they want a whole lot more from it, or something richer, because if I get it, like, from as a person who was in 8th grade and did their electronic music class, this is very simple to set up because we just basically, you learn the synthesizers and how they work, and then you pick one song that's already been done by a famous artist, like I did Highway to the Danger Zone from Top Gun, and you sequence that, and you figure out what instruments you're going to use, and you sequence that. And, it's hard because you're in 8th grade and you're doing this for the first time, but once you do it, it's a relatively easy process to do if you have the music you want and the beat you want. You just have to have money to have really expensive damn synthesizers, the same ones Yuki Kajiura was used to make her soundtracks in the late 90s anime, where she was an electronic engineer first and the composer second at times.
Yeah, and obviously Trent Reznor, obviously again, who,
yes.
He obviously, he's primary musician, although he is quite a good guitarist, his primary thing is pianos and keyboards, and, a lot of Nine Inch Nails' sound, in the sort of, at least in the early 90s, and, obviously, since, the Reznor decided, obviously, doing a lot of the soundtrack work, is very sequencer, is very MIDI, obviously, MIDI keyboard based, But that's the thing. There is an eclecticism on this record that I quite like. We'll get into my general view on this record towards the end, because I feel it is good but not great. But
absolutely. I mean, I understand completely the people who weren't the professional reviewers.
And I love electronic music. There is just something about some of the tracks on this are absolutely superb. I feel this album, because Moby was approaching this from a everything and the kitchen sink thing, because this might be the last thing I do. I feel while it is a very well sequenced album, it does suffer from a lack of editing, I believe.
Oh, a lack of editing? Okay.
A lack of editing.
Okay, well, that's fair enough, too. I think it does fine editing. It's just that where it goes to, especially, like, the last part of the album, kind of brings it down a notch more than it would have if they weren't there. But
and that's
it was the late 90s. Everybody was doing like 70-minute albums. You had to fill up the whole CD for the value.
And that's my approach, because I do feel like when we have journeyed into 90s music, it's like, Jesus Christ, this is like basically a full CD length. What is where is the conciseness of this? Why is there like 18 tracks on this?
And I mean, it should be noted it's 63 minutes. This isn't even approaching Oasis's Be Here Now.
Oh, Jesus.
But it's still, for what it is, it still feels long. In comparison, Daft Punk's Discovery, which is one of the iconic things from this era, is 45 minutes. Like, 18 minutes, and even if there are a few like Flights of Fancy on their way, or some Sonic things that I'm not really care of. That is a very tight house album. And
Moby's albums always seem to be on the longer side. I mean, even his most, his upcoming record, which is called Always Centered at Night, Always Centered at Night is nearly an hour long, which, is... I mean, it's very strange, because Moby seems to have actually gone through a classical phase in the last few years, which I feel sort of I don't really know what to make of. He's had 2 albums released on Deutsche Grammophon, but fair enough. Fair enough to him. Shall we get started on this, because we are coming up to the 45-minute arc and we haven't really 45-minute mark of it. Let's start with Holy Shit, Honey is a brilliant album opener.
Yeah, it is. The album's concept, like, just played out. This is what you are going to get, and it's one of the best versions of what you're going to get.
And it's got it's got this vocal hook, which obviously is the first appearance of these sampled, folk music things. So this is, let me see if we can find it actually.
Sometimes by Bessie Jones, so we don't take up a whole lot of time.
Yeah, which is like, and it's just and obviously get, Moby's piano work, and it is absolutely, Moby aping, sort of the I guess the sort of sound of like, 90, it's got a very New York sound. How do I just, a best way to describe it? It's it sounds like the backbeat you would hear on like a, an East Coast hit, late 80s, sort of something like, Tribe Called Quest sort of, sample thing, where you got that, the vocal line which just goes throughout the thing, and it's just like,
and it's just kind of a couple vocal lines just repeated, and there would be more full songs with verses on it, but this one is it's kind of the stereotypical techno one where they just have these few lyrics back and over and over and over for 30 minutes.
It's a jam. I feel like it is the best way to open this this record. It basically punches you in the face with like the first opening, sensibility, and it's this very danceable tracker. This is sort of like the first flavour of like Mobyism music, Moby's electronic sort of stuff that you get. You get various flavours. I mean, it's very much, as I said, I hesitate to use the word grab bag, because it is, grab bag indicates, it's just, everything's been thrown in, and I feel, there is a degree of, no, this is a carefully catalogued and, carefully, this menu of music has had some, sense put into it, I feel.
Yeah, the album does have a flow to it. I think, to the editing part, it just doesn't flow to where you want it to go. And I think a lot of it is he tries to break up, like, he'll have like a batch of 3 of these or 4 of these, and then break into his original songs and then go back to it and kind of do that, so it doesn't get as tedious as it would.
It's like, how am I going to describe? It's like musical tapas. It's like, here's a little bit of this, here's a little bit of that, here's a little bit of, the sort of, the more hip hoppy, break beaty, big beat sort of stuff, and then, here's me doing the sort of, the contemplative electronic stuff, which we'll get to shortly. Find My Baby is kind of basically the same thing. It's like, it's another, track which uses another breakbeat track which uses another bit of field of Lomax field recording. It's kind of ironic because these first 2 tracks are essentially the bookending singles. Honey was the lead single. Find My Baby is the last single of the lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same opinion. It's good and it's very simple, but it's addicting, and there's something really catchy, and they they caught like something on it.
Yep. And then you get these first 2 tracks, and then you get Porcelain, and Porcelain sort of like outgrew the rest of this album, basically. This is the big hit.
Yeah, and it was the one they played on David Letterman. I distinctly remember, like, I was in Yahoo chat groups. If this tells you how long ago it was.
Oh, Jesus.
Where this was a big thing that Moby was going to be on David Letterman, and it's very odd when you have artists like this on David Letterman, because David Letterman is like this down-to-earth Midwestern who is he's just fucking with everything, or he's just like down to earth and like just doing nonsense to do nonsense and just messing with the most serious people or whatever else. And then here's Moby, and who is ultra serious mode, and with a string. I don't want to say quartet. It's like 3 people, I believe, and
Trio, yeah.
It's just straight. He's on the synths. He performs a song, and there's the strings in the background, and then they just go, and they don't really say anything. And this is after Late Night with David Letterman, and it's just like there's a tone mismatch, but it's not quite when he had a Vocaloid on, and he's just like, "How about that, kids?" Like,
how the fuck do I deal with this thing?
It's like being in the back of Willie Nelson's van. That's what he's.
Yeah.
So
Porcelain, ironically, sort of like, again, this is the first track on the album that Moby actually sings on. He sings on about 5 or 6 of these. This is like more of his sort of down tempo stuff, which he's done, full albums worth of,
Yeah.
This again is like the big hits. This is basically, so this gets used obviously in Danny Boyle's The Beach. This actually probably is where the song basically took off. It also appears, ironically enough, in Playing by Heart, which is a 1998 film. So this is like one of this like basically got popped in some ensemble romantic comedy comedy drama that has ridiculously stacked cast for a film that basically made no money. See Sean Connery and Angelina Jolie are in this. Anyway, but
it
this
was
also
one of the Miramax ones where they tried to make things happen and it just didn't.
Yeah. But also this appears on commercials for Volkswagen Polo, Bosch Power Drills, France Telecom, and was used at the background for Spanish television, a Spanish television channel for 3 years between 2001 and 2004. This is sort of like this is like lush, synthesizer things. The strings are sampled from Ernest Gold's soundtrack for the film Exodus, which was scripted by a blacklisted Dalton Trumbo. It was just, this is very much, this is the big track for this. And obviously this is the big music video for this. The music video, ironically enough, was done by Jonas Åkerlund, who is nowadays known as a film director and a music video guy, but was the original drummer for the Swedish black metal band Bathory. Which is a very strange thing to start off doing. And Moby has reworked Porcelain, and his 2016 memoir was called Porcelain. If Moby has like a signature song, it is this sort of very Porcelain, which is strange because it's this very plaintive sort of like very delicate sort of thing of a song.
Yeah, it is a lot of what I would like about a lot of techno, because post DJ Shadow Uncle would do an album called Never Neverland, which is a lot of music like this, and it's one of my favorite albums. Yeah. So like just the atmosphere of the strings and the sampling is just so perfectly done, and the vocals are so accurately portraying what they want to portray. This is about a relationship that you're in, and you're obviously in a relationship with this person, but you don't love each other, and this isn't going to go anywhere, but you're here, and this is about kind of the loneliness and like the dark feeling of it.
Yeah, maybe ironically enough, actually did not think anyone would want to listen to this, and really didn't like the production on his song, which Moby's sense of judgment, that's something we'll come back to later. Yes.
Like
okay.
he has this weird, where he knows where he stands and who he is, but he has this blind spot for like reading the room or reading anybody else, and like that, that of self-awareness while having self-awareness does come back to bite him.
Yeah. There is a I mean, to be completely neutral, Moby has a sense of like lacking basically a filter, in his music and beyond, and perhaps a degree of honesty that perhaps is not particularly smart. Anyway, we'll get to that. The next track is Why Does My Heart Feel So Bad? Again, it's sort of like the more down-tempo sort of stuff. This is sort of like a slightly different flavour of it, but God, this is a really good track.
Yeah, it is. It's again simple, but it's taking it to another emotion, which, it's following Porcelain in that sadness of, this everything's supposed to feel right, but why is it wrong? Why does my heart why does my soul feel so bad? And this is a little better that they have more lyrics. They have verses in here, and which is so.
This features the Shining Light Gospel Choir on the vocals for this. Again, this is this sort of New York. This is quintessentially. I don't know whether it's just the quality of the choir or the quality of the production. Obviously, most of this album was recorded in obviously Moby's loft in obviously Lower Italy in Manhattan, but this is a very New York sound. This is this sort of not that many things degrees divorced from sort of George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, representing 70s New York. This is a very late night New York at the sort of the turn of the century sort of sound and album, frankly, I think. I don't know. There's something sonically about this that just I don't know whether it's because because Moby's production style obviously is not that divorced from a lot of late 80s and sort of early 90s New York hip hop. Although taken in a very obviously very nerdy white guy sort of direction, but this is a really good song, and. Which is a pity because it's got the only thing I got against this is the music video, which is just like it's a little cartoon guy. Look, he's trying to make friends and
that little Moby character that would follow him to even album covers. It's
little idiot. It's a good track. It was ironically it was released with a remix with Kellis, who they re-released this as a double A-side single with a remix of Honey featuring Kellis. That came to number 17 in the UK chart. A lot of this, I don't know whether Moby's just particularly liked in the UK, or whether he, perhaps there's a degree of, we like
well, it hits a certain audience, and you'll figure that out when it's mentioned who likes this album the best.
Oh yeah, no, I'm aware. Adele loves
Adele. It was the inspiration for 25, like this album.
Yeah.
So she felt it was like holy without being preachy, and which goes through its gospel influences, but it is Moby, who is not necessarily Christian religious, and probably pushes against that because he's probably more Far Eastern with his veganism and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's fair. People get inspiration from certain things, and obviously as somebody who was in their in their teens in the time that this album came out, this was part of the sonic furniture. This is like rumors for people who were their teenage years to the early teenage years to early adulthood, in the late 70s. It's like rumors was on in the background, whether you knew it or not. That is ingrained in your memory.
This you can go your own way. but you're going to hear rumors.
Yeah, this, as I said, this got to a wall, and obviously we can make arguments about music as wallpaper and how music has been devalued because it's part of an advert. But I tell you what, if you're a band and your music is used on an advert, you're making a lot of money out of it most of the time.
Yeah, I think this is, I don't know, this is a lot of crossovers and bookends because for one, this feels like the combination of the beginning of the 20th century and the end of the 20th century, and then it feels like the beginning of when we did these anniversary albums with my version of wallpaper, which was Weezer, and then now it's probably this is probably more wallpaper music for you.
Yeah. I was 8 when Play came out, but it's like
you probably would have heard it a bunch.
Oh so, God, no! And even without knowing it, because as I said, this got to I would say oversaturate. Not even saturation. We're getting beyond saturation now, which is just But yeah, I like Why Does My Heart Feel So Bad. It's a nice track, and it sort of leads us back into the sort of the more urbane sort of electronic stuff, because the next sort of 3 tracks are like a grab bag of the more of sort of Moby's more rock side, I feel.
Yeah, South Side is an interesting one because the concept is he is going with his friends who are mostly broke through the city, I imagine New York City.
But Chicago is influenced by Chicago house music.
Yeah. Well, Chicago doesn't. I don't know. No. Like Chicago doesn't have certain sides, so there's some geographical errors in that, but it's basically being in a city and being with these friends of yours who are broke and going through like bad neighborhoods and where they go in life. And it's like some may go, some may stay, but he's still in the car, and sometimes you have your firearm, and some of these people are going to die, or they get involved in gangs, or they go elsewhere, which is really weird, especially when he mentions it's sidearm, so it's kind of like Moby. It feels like Moby's trying to be gangster, even though it's like not. He's not implying that. He's saying some may go, some may stay. Some are doing that, but it is just
packing
mostly
heat.
Lifelike. Packing heat, like a few years ago, and putting that on the soundtrack.
Yeah. Moby, heat, not packing heat, not heat. Heat the soundtrack you did.
Yeah.
Moby is like there are lots of people who I feel like could get a little bit of gangster kudos for various things in their background, their history. Moby is not really one of them, despite having been in several punk bands.
No.
It doesn't really. He's obviously in recent years he's gone for like a lot of tattoos and stuff, but
But it's one of those, he is harder than you think he is, but like there is that separation between people like him and people like Eminem, who like come from a similar poor background, but like fought their way out of it. And there is a certain disdain those two types of people have for each other, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah, Moby is so obviously this is most notable for being I think this was Gwen Stefani's first single since after she left No Doubt. Obviously No Doubt have reformed as of quite recently. But essentially Moby kind of basically goes, can't mix this. I'll come around. Basically he's not happy with the way it's mixed. The vocal performance is great. The version that gets released is again a massive hit for Moby. Where he appears on an ASA. It is Moby's highest charting track until 2018, where Porcelain gets sampled on an ASAP Rocky song. Which is very strange combination of words there.
Yes, it is.
it's very, you know, it does very, very well. I mean, this seems to have been one of the earliest like mixed things, because you know, Moby is doing mixing for this, and you know, no doubt, and obviously just come off obviously the colossal hit that is Tragic Kingdom, and you know, Moby can't work out why Gwen Stefani wants to be on this track, but Gwen Stefani is on this track, except she's not. Oh no, she is, because you know, Play is absolutely exploding in the background. The music video of this, as I said, oh sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of a generic music video, more like.
It was hip hop. We're making fun of hip hop. We're I'm a very white guy wearing glasses, and you know, and you wonder why Eminem had a problem with him.
And then Gwen Stefani's here. I don't know why she's here, because this is a song about like the boys, and we're packing heat, and there's kind of this thing in the '90s where if there was like a woman with them, like all of them would just spend their time trying to get with her instead of this driving around and doing the city version of wandering Walmart.
Yeah, it's fine. I feel weirdly enough it is better in the format it is on the album. I don't particularly feel this needs like the vocal on it, which is very strange, because obviously Moby is doing the vocals on Southside. This is his second vocal appearance on the record, and you know what, I think it's bizarrely enough, I think it's fine with Moby's vocals on this. And then we have Rushing, a track that I've already managed to forget about.
Yeah, I kind of do. I mistake it for Machete most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's very similar. Like they're both like very. Let me see here. And I don't want to mistake it for like Natural Blues or something else. No. But this is the harder version of the album, and it's a lot of good tracks, and I a lot of like them because they have energy. And this is like the more energy parts, and it's just.
This is Moby doing a Christmas song. Apparently, there's like this has Christmas references. I don't know what was Moby just like going fuck it, put a Christmas song on there, Moby.
I don't know. It is just it's part of his angry side, but it's, you know,
it's a Christmas song.
it's not Machete, which is like, you know, what he was doing, but in a more controlled environment than just like screaming into his microphone at the highest level without peaking the damn thing.
Yeah,
which I've probably done.
Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. It's like, I feel the problem with it is very much a. The problem is because it's part between this is by the way one criticism of the thing, because it's part between Southside and Body Rock, which are both very up tempo songs. It just sort of like angry Moby screaming into the microphone sort of doesn't really gel with the rest of like what's going on. This is like somebody just burst into a party and just started basically having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, although it's a lot better than it is in Everything Is Wrong, because then it's just like you're having a good time, and just like Moby is gonna be Debbie Downer here. And
no,
like,
meat is
all
murder.
I want is to be loved, and I gotta calm my vocals because I live in an apartment. I could probably do it as raw as he does it on, but I'm gonna have people
go vegan. Yeah, go vegan.
Oh, no. I'm from Nebraska. Like that is you don't know what you are asking me, and the people who are vegan and vegetarian in Nebraska, you have my respect, because you know where you are from. It is just like you don't have to know about football, but you have to know about football. You don't.
Yeah,
it's that kind of place.
Yeah. And then it sort of like flips back into, you know, rock, electronic rock, big bloody hell, big beat Moby, and Body Rock slaps. I'm sorry. It basically, it might be Moby basically doing his like take his execution on, you know, basically the other big beat sort of stuff at the time, which obviously was Fatboy Slim and the Chemical Brothers. It's like, yeah, but watch me do it anyway.
Yeah, and it's really good. It's kind of, it's more tedious than a lot of the songs from the genre.
Yeah.
But it does do enough. Like it's like repeating this, you know, body rock theme, and then getting to a chorus, which is like, we rock the body, we rock the bod, we rock the body, and you know,
so that's
increasing the intensity and it's all in the beats, it's all in the mix, and it's all you know, it goes with a lot of things. In fact, it was the theme to a sitcom called Veronica's Closet, which was Kirstie Alley's career is flagging and she needs to do something. And this is what she did for one season, and then it got canceled. And Body Rock was its theme. And it's just like, it is like, I don't know how I describe the opening. It is just like one of those 80s opening where people bounce in, and it's like, hey, it's starting this guy, and you love this guy, or and it starts Kirstie Alley, and they're bouncing in and going, hello, it's me, to this song. And welcome to the 90s, everyone. This kind of opening is behind by the decades, and they're not even playing it ironically with the music choice. It's just what they have, and
because you bought it. Moby was selling this one off cheap.
And that's kind of why the show failed, because it had no idea what its audience was or what they wanted.
We created Friends, now we made this. Oh god. This is great, but it is basically, it's Moby doing his riff on, you know, basically going, hey Norman and the two guys in the Chemical Brothers whose names I can't remember, watch this. And both his managers try to stop him doing this. This samples Love Rap by Spoonie G and the Tetris 3, who are, you know, an early proto hip hop group. You know, and you know, Moby sampled this. You know, this is like one of the first things that Moby sampled off the Mr. Magic show in the early 80s. The guitar line is nicked off Moby's beloved British post-punk band Gang of Four, and rapper Nikki D, who has appeared on a couple of things, mostly Daddy's Little Girl, which apparently is like her big song, appears on this as well on the choruses, because why not? Soundtrack wise, this also appeared on FIFA 2001 and on FIFA 2023 and on a Rolling Rock beer advert, because why not at this point?
I wonder if FC23 or FC24 is the free one on PlayStation Online. I should look that up, but I'll check that later. But so I can have the because it's the free one this month on PlayStation Online for the US audiences. So I'll check that out, and everything is connected.
Yeah. Yes, information available. Information correct at time of going to air. Other football games are available. But they're mostly owned by Konami, so why would you want to? Machete! Machete.
I actually like their stuff, but then again, I have a fondness for fake football teams based on real teams, or baseball, or whatever. I come from...
And Juventus!
Moving on!
And Juventus. Natural Blues.
Yes.
Juventus. Natural Blues. This is another one of the ones. This is actually the last one on the album that features the Lomax sample. This features 30s American folk singer Vera Hall, and basically samples her most famous song, which is Trouble So Hard. She was inducted into Alabama Women's Hall of Fame in 2005, so that's nice. Great. This also features a British electronic band or electronic group I Monster, who do some of the mixing. This is alright. It's fine. It features those characters. An alternate animated version appears on this. The music video on this seems remarkably expensive. Christina Ricci's in, apparently. I just didn't know. Very nice. You know, very, you know, again, it's that sort of, it's the Moby does basically his sample plus hip hop, beat, which is fine. Quite, very, but it's where I feel alongside Honey, the sampling works the best. I feel because it's like this, the way that the sample is used on this seems a little bit smarter done. I feel than a lot of them.
Yeah, it has more. There's the verses, and it kind of does more than just like hitting you with the one line over and over again. And it has to do that because it's more of a thoughtful one, and it's like nobody knows my troubles but God. So you gotta like give it more than that.
Yeah, and you gotta use this carefully. I feel.
Yeah, and he does use it carefully, and he uses it well. It's just like it's in the incredibly upbeat, and goes hard part of the album, so it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And as well as the music video, even though it's expensive, because looking through it, like Honey was done by Roman Coppola, who is obviously one of the Coppola clan, and it's the weird one where it's Moby going into a box and then splitting it off into people, and there's a reason Roman Coppola has been more famous by helping a lot of other people like Wes Anderson. This is around the time he does his big feature movie CQ, which it's like it tries to be Wes Anderson, it tries to be a lot of things, and it's a good film. I like it, but it's like this should be working a whole lot more than it is, and that's a lot of Roman Coppola's like. This is supposed to make me think, but it doesn't. And then, of course, we have Joseph Kahn, who doing Southside and that parody, and it's just like that's just Joseph Kahn would later be Taylor Swift's video director for like Bad Blood and like Blank Space. So there's that. I'm gonna easily grab. This is easily grabbable for general audiences, but I don't know if it's good or not. But it's expensive.
Yeah, and the film Talk with Ice Cube. He's also been trying to make
stars from Roger Ebert.
He's been trying to also make an adaptation of Neuromancer for basically about 2 decades, and also could have directed a Swamp Thing film. I mean, Khan has basically worked with a lot of the big things. He also did, ironically enough, the video for Without Me, which obviously I think is Without Me the one that name checks Moby. I think so. This is very strange, which is like it's the same guy.
It's like I wonder if they had discussions about that, either Eminem with Joseph Kahn or Joseph Kahn with Moby, because it's certainly a weird thing to do, but I don't know.
We're getting a bit granular. Obviously, Natural Blues is directed by David Chappelle, who is more.
Is this the guy who directed? What was it? Phantoms.
No. He directed Crumped. Whatever the hell is Crumped.
Okay.
He also directed, most notably, fair number. Phantoms was Joe Chappelle.
Jesus.
Most Dave Chappelle is obviously a fine art artist and does a lot of things. He's also the guy who directed Hosier's Take Me to Church, which is like this is like the which I feel is sort of a reasonable. You sort of know what sort of territory this music video is going to be compared to this. Although he also did several Christian Aguilera videos, and the video is a lot of Christian Aguilera videos, and
I should clarify this is David LaChapelle, not
David LaChapelle,
the comedian.
No, that would be very strange.
Very, very different people. Very different people.
Very different people. So that's sort of obviously the territory we're dealing with. I don't have a problem with Natural Blues. Is as I said, I think it's one of the best uses of the samples on the album. It's sort of like I don't know whether Moby was putting a little more consideration into using this than like some of the other tracks. It's certainly, like I would say, in the top 3 of the tracks I like from this album. Machete.
Yeah, this is Moby going the hardest he's gonna go in this album, and it is him. It is a hard, like, repeating sample. I would say, maybe. I don't know if it's sample or guitar line or whatever else, and it's just it gets more intense, and then Moby gets more angry, and I think it actually works. It works a lot more than it does in Everything Is Wrong.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of thought put into the transitions and the placement. So, I mean, it's a little weird coming out of Natural Blues, but it's still in the place where, you're depressed and then you go off. So, and Machete is the most going off in this. And, like, he is yelling, but he is not. It doesn't feel like he is in front of the mic. He is in an empty room that he is alone, and just down to the point where he is having a mental breakdown and screaming.
Again, I would say this is like I don't know whether it's just because I like a lot of electronic rock, and electronic, the rockier end of electronic rock is where I tend to prefer things, although I do like, obviously, like, big band, big beat sort of stuff, and obviously we've spoken about the Propeller Heads, obviously, who are, in the similar sort of period to this and doing, similar-ish things. I think Rock Moby is where I like him best, and just as simple as that.
Okay.
Except for
especially where he would go later, which is, being the impromptu theme for the Jason Bourne movies.
Oh boy, yeah, I forgot about that. Maybe somewhere later. I don't. Machete is a good. It fits into that running order quite neatly, because this is sort of like we get the back half of this album. So from sort of 7 onwards, which is as I said earlier, is a wisp of a thing. Sort of basically the night out starts, to use an analogy, the night out starts to go a little bit weird and a little bit. Somebody's taken something they shouldn't have, and sort of basically goes in very interior looking and sort of like slightly hazy feeling, I feel. A lot of this is more internalized than a lot of his help, which is like responding to society, or it doesn't feel like he's yelling at everybody else. He's yelling by himself at the pain he feels to get it out. And that's kind of the difference between like Everything Is Wrong and Animal Rights than this. I did own Animal Rights. I think I still do. It might be in the basement in my hometown, because I didn't want this in my CD set that got stolen. So it's probably in packaging somewhere, waiting for me to like listen to it again. Oh, there's a reason I don't listen to this anymore. From a skim through it, it's sort of like, the how do I put it? It's where you guys, obviously sometimes artists like do a new album sound, and it's like please go back to doing the other thing, whatever, the sort of, obviously, I'm not, saying that, Moby's rock music isn't good. It's just when he does like purely rock and quite confrontational punk, it's like the Moby doesn't really, in a band, Moby has other things to push against. When you're doing sort of like that sort of music on your own, it's sort of like, it is like yelling into a shipping container. And like it. Why the reason Animal Rights got pushed back so good is he is not a guy who can portray that kind of music. It's just like, at any point you could probably punch him in the face and knock him over. Although, if he has a tougher background, it might be less of a story than that, or more of a thing than that. It might be. But from appearances, you could knock him out in one punch. Yeah, and the thing is, you obviously, just to go back to animal rights, but I was about to say animal rights. Animal rights for, animal rights has its fans, and those fans include Axl Rose and Bono. Who I don't know what Bono and Axl Rose particularly thought of this, but it has its fans. I do not count myself among them. I think Play is probably still the high tide mark of his career. Moving on to Seven. Seven is a track on this album.
It is a transition because Machete is extremely hard and Run On is extremely fun, and you need a transition, otherwise you are going to get whiplash and you're going to sue Moby for whiplash and causing harm. And then all of his money goes bye-bye.
It's like as I said, to compare it to, it's just like the moment of whiplash I had, where I will sue DJ Shadow for track 2 through to 3 on the Outsider, which is very, very whiplashy.
I was just like, wait for it. He found it.
Yeah, and that's fine. Run On is a great track. So Run On obviously
is my favorite on the album.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I'd say totally agree. It's that, this obviously reworks God's Gonna Cut You Down, which is obviously, a piece of English folk music a piece of American folk music that goes back into, the time of, hymnals and other sort of thing. It is old. Obviously Johnny Cash reworked this, most famously on American Highway 500 Highways, which obviously is the first of his the posthumous albums of Johnny Cash, where obviously in hindsight, probably Cash at his best. Apparently Moby was not aware of the folk song. This samples, by the way, a version by Bill Langford and the Langford Heirs from 1949, which is where it's called Run On for a long time, which obviously, short to that thing. It's been covered by loads of people. I mean, this is like, a American folk standard, I feel.
Yeah, even if you haven't heard this song, you've heard this song.
You've heard this song.
Yeah.
But the use of this is really, is where everything sort of melds together in terms of, the sampling and the sound and, what Moby is matching, the existing piece of music to, obviously the soundscape that he has created.
Yeah, it is the completion of the idea that he started with on this album. It is the fullest version. It has probably damn near the full song, and it plays to the mood. His music does more than just is a MIDI keyboard and just adds a beat to it, but it just adds to it's a God's Gonna Cut You Down, but he adds it a fun thing to it, it's weirdly fun to listen to this song. Yeah, he gets an emotion out of it I don't think a lot of people do, and it kind of enriches it. It kind of I don't know. It's weirdly resonant for me in a certain way because people have created a monster in the recent time with the world burning down, and they've ran away and they've run away and they're running out of places they can run away. And this song, weirdly enough, is resonant, especially for the people who did a whole lot of bad things in the name of God and are in a corner and trying to use the same excuses, and they're not working anymore.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's the melding of this, this American folk standard to, this very new this very modern, very starkly modern sort of electronic, soundscape. When you obviously compare it to, obviously the Cash version, which is about as traditional as you can get with it. The fact that you can take this song and you can, it is malleable, and you can do things with this. I feel it's like an underappreciated sort of thing of what Moby's managed to do on this track.
Yeah, and it's just, again, it's just, you have to listen to it to get like, oh wow, this actually works. This really works. I mean, and if it would probably be one of the greatest albums of all time if all of the songs were like this. Because there is a case to be made that a lot of this is simplistic. And a lot of this is running a beat over these samples. And, adding here and there. And, like, jamming the same chorus or the same line over and over.
Which I feel
it's fair, but it's also a bit reductive, and it also takes out the experience, but it's enjoyable like this. Like, if it was any more complicated, something would be getting in the way of something else. I mean, it's got a good jog, it's got a good flow, and it feels like if you added one more thing would complete it, it would trip over itself or make it denser.
And that's the thing with sampling as a musical, as a compositional tool. It's like you can go to the extreme. You can go to something like DJ Shadow's Introducing. You can go, this is what happens when you have the skill to essentially build an entire album out of nothing but samples. And then you could have the other extent of this, which is obviously things like, I don't know, the Beastie Boys, where you just have the flute sample, which is like this 3-second loop, just bit, and
we will be getting to Paul's later this year.
Indeed we will. That's actually our next episode, I believe. Yes, we'll talk about what we will be talking about later in this episode, and you might get an inkling of what. Yeah, but this is there is but you can go, oh, here we're gonna put samples from this, and you go, and now it sounds cluttered, and now it sounds, you've lost the spirit of it. You could go to something like Army of Me, which is obviously the similar period, which is like all Bjork's done is she's stuck that drum loop from when the levee breaks in, and it propels the song along, as that drum loop tends to do, or etc. Sampling, I feel, perhaps because obviously people get very sniffy about sampling as a compositional tool. You are constantly in this balancing act with this Frankenstein that you've built of going, oh well, I've put this sample in this, and now I have to make this sound like a cohesive whole. Anyway, I really like this track. I think it is. I would say it is the best track on the album. And then we sort of basically enter the dark tea time of Moby's soul for the last third of the record. Yeah,
we have Down Slow, which is the transition to Moby from 1 to 4 a.m. That's the best way I can put it. It's just like by himself, looking out a window. Maybe it's in a hotel or something. Hotel Moby. No, not hotel.
No, out of the hotel, Moby. Out of the hotel. That won't be for a while.
But he's thinking about things. He's thinking about whatever else, and it's a lot of sad and it's a lot of negative emotions. I will say, If Things Were Perfect is a really good song because it has that bass line, and then it has the sample from Give Me Summer, and that really helps the song along in a way that the rest of them do not. Like, these songs kind of blend together. Like, If Things Were Perfect, sometimes I get mistaken for The Sky Is Broken, which they are about 10 minutes apart from each other. But like, this part of the album is the most flowing together, and like it's in a way that they put this at the back of the album, so if you want to stop listening, they won't mind, I guess.
Yeah, it's like the back half of when we talked about U2's Pop, and it's just like, this is a 8 or a 9 out of, you know, a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 album for like 2/3 of this, and then it goes into amorphous glob sort of like territory and drops to like a 6. It's like, yeah, just cut. This is the thing. Like, this is a peculiarity with 90s albums that, oh god, they just go on, and then, you know, you get into like, you know, basically, you know, doodles like guitar, flute, and string, where it's like, this is lovely, but maybe that's literally just a list of everything that's on this track, and, you know, this starts to. I'm gonna be frank, you know, when you get into the sort of the instrumentals in the back quarter of this, which is basically, you know, everything apart from The Sky Is Broken, which is basically that sort of 2-3 minute sort of section. Particularly guitar, flute, and string, I think is the worst culprit for this. It does it does start to sound like, in a polite way, it starts to sound like ambient music. In impolite music, it sounds like music for adverts.
What it sounds like the ripoff of Pure Mood's world music that was lazily assembled, because like the flute sample doesn't even sound like a flute. It sounds like somebody is pressing a keyboard. Maybe there is a flute player on this, a flautist, but it feels really fake. The flute breaks the song because it doesn't feel real, and like we are in real emotion time, and it just, that feeling of fakeness really hurts it. By the way, speaking of Pure Moods, Porcelain was on Pure Moods 3, but
yep, that does not surprise me.
As the Pure Moods snob, I will say, like, the two, all you need to do is pay attention to the first two. I think the Pure Moods 2 is better. Pure Moods 1 will still work, but it still probably reaches a bit too far, and 2 is the solidifying of that world music sound. And this has been your snobbery on Pure Moods by Joe.
I kind of like Even Flow by Enya, just to put that in there, which I guarantee is on Pure Moods. Was that on Pure Moods? I'm assuming.
Massive Attack is on Pure Moods too.
Oh bloody hell!
It's the House MD. It's the House MD theme, Teardrop. That's really good, and it's just like what got me watching House MD was like, I recognize this. Holy shit!
This is good music. Yes.
Massive Attack. I will say some things about Massive Attack. I don't think I've ever totally liked one of their albums, but my god, a lot of their songs would be high on favorite songs. Like Protection with Tracy Thorn is tied for my favorite song of all time. And I don't remember what my other favorite song is at the moment, like when I codified my favorite songs of all time, but Protection is my number one, tied. So like I like this version of Massive Attack, I understand we are getting off topic. I'm getting myself on topic, but it's extremely hard because even if Things Were Perfect and The Sky Is Broken are sonically different songs, especially with the bass line, they feel like the same songs. Like, am I getting this? They're both about relationships where you're wondering if you feel this emotion, but it's not working out, and there is just that feeling. But both songs are very different sonically. But the literature is such a way where, is that this one or is it this one? And I have zero thoughts on Ever Loving or Inside. Like, they're in one ear, out the other. The separation between If Things Were Perfect is The Sky Is Broken is an emptier soundscape, so you pay attention to the lyrics, and I realize Moby is putting this in poetry, but it's like things like "put your mouth to mine" are weird ways to say things about this. And I understand there's this feeling that it's not passion, it's just an emotion, to feel an emotion. He's putting it in a way that it's an action to feel an emotion and not a passion. but it still feels weird, and it just like it takes the brain out of it. And there's that like in Metal Gear Solid where the question mark appears over the guard's head, like, huh, that's odd, and then they look around, and then it goes back to what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's like my reaction to the lyrics on "The Sky Is Broken."
Jesus Christ, Pure Moods is a weird selection of music. It's like, oh god.
Yeah. My mind wanders on this and thinks about other things because it's like you don't think much about it. You listen to it, and then especially when you go to the Spotify and it's mixed with the B sides, it's like then suddenly Flower kicks in. It's like, oh, whoa, hey,
whoa. Yeah.
The opening credit music's for Gone in 60 Seconds, and now we're back to. Now I'm paying attention. Now this is good stuff, but then. Yeah.
The mood of this is very, very. You know, don't get me wrong. I appreciate and I take my hat off to Moby in creating a mood at the back end of this album. It is not a mood I particularly like or want to be associated with somebody in that mood, which I think is the problem with it.
Yes, it is a good soundscape. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, but it is. Do you want it at the end of this album? And is this? It just kind of feels like, do you want to fill out the album because there's space there and you want to take it, and that's kind of what it feels like. I mean, I do like ambient stuff, I do like mood stuff, and sometimes I'm in the mood for this, and you know, I have depressive episodes at like 2 a.m. all the time, and this fits more than that. It's just like,
and that's the
in comparison to what the rest of this album does, it's the weak point, and it ends with My Weakness, which is a good mood point. And I especially like the way his lyrics are just falling away, like he doesn't even have the power to express like what he is feeling. It is said, and then it gets crumpled up by the atmosphere or the sky or the whatever else.
Yeah, and that my problem with it, I feel, is that basically between like If Things Were Perfect and My Weakness is like you could cut that, and I don't think the album would particularly suffer from it. And you know, that's probably heresy. I'm probably going to get things thrown at me. I do not care for the tracks between If Things Were Perfect and My Weakness. The Sky Is Broken is fine. It's like it's you know, this is the problem with the album. You know, it feels like this is the part of the record, subconsciously or otherwise, that Moby is going, and if we take 30 seconds from that, we can sell that to Ford. If we can take 30 seconds of that, we can sell it to Cadbury's, and you know, this starts to be. I don't know whether Moby is deliberately sort of knocking this up to a certain number of things, and he's just putting on, you know, doodles or sort of stuff, you know, stuff that he has half an ear to going, this is going to work, you know, quite nicely with the nice little business model that we've worked out between the three of us, you know, sort of sensibility to it. You know, I feel it is a very well sequenced album, but I you know, as I said, you can take or leave the sort of the run between If Things Were Perfect and My Weakness, and you can skip those tracks if you wish, and you know, you don't have to go down through the sojourn into, you know, Moby's interior mental state, you know, to a large degree, you know, because My Weakness does that fairly well as one piece of music.
Yeah, it's and My Weakness is an ending too. Like it fades out, and then there's that, like, you know, Angelo Badalamenti, like just feeling that there's sound, but it's not specifically doing anything, that he uses in a lot of Twin Peaks, like the darker parts, and that's the end of the,
definitely,
and that's the ending. So I think, but you could cut The Sky Is Broken, or you know, Ever Loving Inside, and you would be just fine. I mean, this is something I carry with me. It's a bigger album to me because it's something I carry with me. I understand its shortcomings and everything now, but this was kind of like when your secret club becomes one of the most popular things in the United States, and it's just like this was stuff like 5 people knew about and we could talk about, and then for better or worse, it became a thing for a year that sold 12 million copies, 10 million copies. And it was on Letterman, like, everybody knows about this, and unfortunately everybody knows about this, because then you have to open up Moby's life and what he's been doing with himself, and, people getting their eyes on it, and then you get to Eminem, who was, at the end of the decade, making himself a force that could not be destroyed, and destroying anybody else he felt like. And there wasn't anybody in his way. Moby wasn't picking a fight with Eminem. No, I mean, I'm sure, like, his response to Eminem's stuff was just like, oh, looks like somebody has a crush on me. Because he's got mentioned so much with Eminem, because, Moby pissed him off because he's such a pansy wuss, other F word, whatever else. And that's not his image, even though, you can see some cracks in that image. Like, Conan O'Brien, of all people, pointed out the cracks in Eminem's image even before Encore, because at the Video Music Awards, the Triumph the Insult Dog comic was going to try to talk to Eminem, and they were going to have, this improv, and immediately the comedian who got taken down by Eminem's people, and then, Conan just made a entire segment out of this. It's like, MTV, ooh, we're the edge. Ouch, I cut myself on the edge. And then they just cut away from it and just didn't see, because they didn't want to ruin Eminem's image of this tough guy. But the moment Triumph the Insult Dog comic comes along, he gets tackled. So, but he
that is a very 2000 sentence, Joe. I have no idea what that is.
Okay, Triumph the Insult Dog comic, or?
Yeah, kind of.
Or and when Conan O'Brien was king, and of at least the indie people, but yeah, so
So Eminem's guy is picked a fight with a what appears to be a puppet
sock
dog.
puppet,
a sock puppet
who
dog.
Just says
that's a normal thing to do.
Yeah, whose tagline is, "For me to poop on. That would be great for me to poop on."
Oh god, I recognise that sentence, which must be the sentence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
he has been in pop culture for a very long time.
Yeah, and let's be fair, Eminem has basically dropped off the he sort of basically, is ironic that he sort of mocked Moby, because he's probably about the same level as popular as Moby at this point. It's he like Moby is a vestige of the 1990s that refuses to sort of particularly leave the conversation.
And, Without Me is when he was the force. He was going to destroy everybody else in rap he didn't like. Todd in the Shadows infamously said, Will Smith's career was destroyed by Eminem just saying, Will Smith doesn't have to swear to sell records. Well, I do, so fuck him and fuck you too. And then, Moby, Lonely, and then, whatever else he has to say, which I am not going to repeat.
Nobody listens to tech. Nobody listens to tech. It's sure, Mathers. Sure.
And that played a role in the downfall, which he didn't really have a downfall. He just had downfall in public perception, because 18, except for Pitchfork, which did the exact same thing. It was accused of being a sequel by Pitchfork that didn't change anything. It was the Ghostbusters 2, and Pitchfork was the critics of Ghostbusters 2, saying, you did the exact same movie, even though he didn't, but it was just you just did the same thing again, and we hate it, and you suck, and you should feel bad for what you've done, even though Extreme Ways, it's it got accidentally put in as the Jason Bourne, but it's just Moby accidentally getting thrown in with the most macho of movies. I know there is that's the transition post 9/11 to toxic masculinity to I do this because I need to, and that probably Moby's a good connecting point, but it's just
18 is a very post 9/11 album, I think.
Yeah, and It's like the gospel, but it's like a lot of the sadder stuff, which is, it is okay, but there is a lot of sameness to play, where if somebody like Pitchfork wanted to give it a 2.5 or whatever they gave it, they can do that, and there's a lot of fuel for that fire. And then it, kind of went downhill until Hotel Moby just bottomed out, which is just a lot of ambience, a lot of what people would, hate about New World.
Yeah.
Like world stuff, like ambient stuff, that it's really lazy, it's really empty. And then he just kind of went on to just do whatever he wants, like work with David Lynch, just do a concept record about a night in New York City, just whatever else, and it has an audience. It's okay. I don't remember anything about listening to those, even though I had a couple of those albums, but and then Moby decided he needed to write about his relationship with Natalie Portman, or his lack of relationship that he assumed was more.
Yeah, so Moby wrote essentially 2 books. Obviously, there was Porcelain, which is a memoir, which is sort of, I feel, covers up to the "and now I released play" sort of like section of his life, which fair enough. As I said, that section of the book, fine, yeah, okay. Obviously, you can take or leave Moby as a writer, and obviously, he's certainly verbose. He's certainly quite, I'm not criticizing his quality as a writer, but if you're really into Moby, Porcelain, a Memoir is a very good book. Then it fell apart. Oh dear. Yes, Moby, it did fall apart because you decided you were going to basically outline the list, the notches on your bed, frankly, for lack of a better thing, and cancelled your book tour. And that cover of Then It Fell Apart, which is Moby, essentially in a fetal position holding a microphone, is Yes, Richard, this is probably a very accurate depiction of your reaction to, oh god, actually everyone thinks I'm really creepy.
And probably, like, like, the biggest thing is, like, gaslighting is an overused term, but it feels like he gaslighted himself into thinking he had a relationship with Natalie Portman. He absolutely did not have, and she went up front with it and combated that right away. And then a whole bunch of other comments came out, and that's just like, you're a creeper, and like, who lives mostly with yourself, because you don't even record with other people most of the time. You record in your house, and you use yourself, and it's just like, it might be, I don't want to provide excuses. I'm just going from my experience, where I could have turned down this path, where you are left with yourself a whole lot of times when you are in this kind of situation, and it leads to places you shouldn't go, but you don't have these surroundings that you can't stop yourself from, like, assuming too much or pushing too hard or something like that. And
because he doubled down on it, and he went, no, definitely. It's like, no, Moby, no.
Like, bat, no, stop, and it's just like he has this appearance of this person who understands that he's kind of a joke to some people, and he will show up in things like the "He Needs a Kidney" 30 Rock anthem for his boss, which is supposed to be like, those 80s "Please Help Africa" songs, but it's to help the CEO of NBC get a kidney. And this is a 30 Rock bit, and he's on there, and he has that kind of self-awareness, and until he doesn't, and then he will just like open his mouth and keep talking, and the stream of consciousness to, you clearly don't live in the world we live in, and you have said too much, and we are going to dunk on you on Twitter or X or whatever, like that, how absolutely clueless you are. and just live in this academic, theoretical world. And that's the end of your, public persona, is like this going back to when you were an underground person and being on Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and you understood the joke, and there's this other thing where you were being eaten by this creature and very badly acting. You were underground, you understood where you were, and you joked about, and they joked about, nobody cares, Moby. Nobody. But it's real. It's for real now. We are really saying that to you now. And I get it.
Please shut up, Moby.
My God, you are making me ashamed that in the past that, you were already a troubled person, but it was just you could not connect with people in a way you felt like. And then you felt more enlightened, and we thought that was the end of it. And you were self-aware, and you just brushed off M&M stuff. And you were at least an okay person. But you weren't an okay person, weren't you, Moby?
No, you were not. It's worth noting, most of his stuff released, post the book, the second book, obviously, and then it fell apart, is sort of I would describe it basically as sub Brian Eno sort of stuff. It's sort of ambience and, experimentally stuff, and the most notable, obviously he releases All Visible Objects, which is really the last time up until the forthcoming album that's coming out later this year that Moby has done a strictly album-based album. I mean, the majority of the rest of it is, as I said, Brian Eno sort of type ambient stuff. I mean, he's released stuff, music to sleep to one album, Reprise, which is obviously with which essentially is a orchestral reworking of his stuff. Resound New York City, which again is reworking of his stuff with orchestras. This ended up on Deutsche Grammophon, God almighty. And obviously Always Centered at Night is coming out in about a month, and
it's weird that the movie Tar came out at the same time. Because it has that. He's now on that same kind of audience and has the same reputation as Tar does at the end of the movie.
Yeah, he's not quite got to playing, doing soundtracks for Japanese video games, but he's not far off it. Let's put it like that. The stuff that he basically produces is now for that sort of, I would say, for the audience. I mean, I don't mean this as an insult. It is basically for the audience that Moby has retained throughout this, debacle. It's basically, oh yes, Moby. No, you definitely. Obviously, this is basically songs for the echo chamber. It's basically, it's obviously now he is doing a tour for obviously the 25th anniversary of Play, which obviously is touring around the world. He Moby essentially has a captive audience. He has the probably multi-millions, and obviously obviously the money he donates. It's worth noting he does donate a considerable amount of his album proceeds to animal rights charities. He does at least put his mouth where his his
money where his mouth is.
His mouth is,
and he does genuinely care about animals. That is the genuine thing.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
when it comes to interactions with people, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of this, we should wrap it up because we've gone way longer than we expected on this, and that's a lot of my asides. Just because talking about the main album, it kind of gets samey, and then you get to the end of the album, and I don't remember half of it. So, it's like I said, it's a definitive album. It is an impact album. It was the pulse of a certain part of the nation, whether you want to call that Barnes & Noble, electronica, or whatever else. This is what it was, and this was a breakthrough, and it led to a lot of things, including how bands made their careers. They were sold a career before they had one, and that fits for bands like Jet or whatever the man saw, Portugal the Man or whatever that was, where you knew their biggest song from commercials. You did not hear this on the radio. You did not hear this anywhere else, and that it kind of made that thing. And like every iPod commercial ever, where they essentially just sold the album instantly just because it was on an Apple iPod commercial. And that's where I wouldn't say it originated, because these routes were already made, but it was solidified by Moby and Play and what this did. And it's still
worth
a
saying
really
this
good. It's still a really good album. It is still a kind of landmark in the right and wrong ways, and especially if you want to put it in the notches of a white guy getting popular off of black music, you can certainly do that. There's a lot of fuel for that fire. And if you want to put it negative, like if you put a gun to my head and you said a Moby album, tell the people to listen to one, I like to score, because it was like the soundtrack album, which is the same thing, but it is like he is doing this for Heat. He is doing this for Cool World. He is doing this for commercial means, but not specifically commercials. So you want to listen to that, and they are mixed down to absolute perfection in that album. So listen to that album. Play is very good. It is extremely good. It is there's a reason it caught on. It's extremely catchy. It's extremely addictive. And it is a part of me whether I like it or not. I am a pale white guy who is alone a lot of his life and yells at a lot of people who don't see the things I do. And in fact, I just got in a fight with one of my now ex-friends about, ceasefire now. Ceasefire now, trans rights, all that stuff. I will say this out loud. Fuck you. Cancel me. Indeed. I dare you. Like, I was never approved for a series to begin with.
Indeed. We're very much vehemently for that, by the way. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, I feel the most important thing about this album, trans rights, free Palestine, etc., is this fundamentally changed how an album is, released. You nowadays you'll get every, a rock band, let's take for example your one of your favorite bands, the Foo Fighters. Where was the first time you heard a track off Wasting Light? Oh, it's on the soundtrack for Thor. What's this new track off, I don't know, the latest, obviously, it is for a lot of bands, it is a way to get into the public eye, and B, to obviously to release your album. It's somebody, a band the size of the Foo Fighters are going, yeah, we'll put our new song, a band the size of Soundgarden go, yeah, we'll put our new song on the soundtrack of, a Marvel film, and that is how we're going to get ears on it, and, obviously our fan base are going to buy the album anyway. This is how we attract new people. That's the thing. You can go, oh, but, and this is the thing, it's a very important thing to sort of, particularly with the way that, obviously, music is going, and obviously, the way that particularly TikTok is bringing, music into the public ear. It is, you get this very snobbish, you came across this track from a TikTok trend. You came across, Fleetwood Mac's Dreams from a guy riding a skateboard down, a street in Los Angeles, swinging out of a container of, I don't know, it was ocean spray, and but. It has become, virality and adverts, the whole macrocosm of, social media and, social media trend. That's, brought things like, Kate Bush had, obviously an extreme example, because obviously, Stranger Things is enmeshed in the 1980s. It's the same.
But there's a connection there.
Yeah.
Because in the first season, what was the biggest song used in Stranger Things?
Moby.
It is Moby's When I'm Cold, I'd Like to Die, which does not fit that at all. They just used it because it was great. It is an anachronism. It was not released until the 90s. There is no reason that should be on there except they felt it fit for that.
Yeah, but you know that's
and
that's the thing, you know. Exactly, you know, basically, you know, for even for somebody with the prominence of Kate Bush, you know, you go how much that usage that film usage. Obviously, you know, film usage has always, you know, been important for, you know, big rock bands. You know, you obviously get things like, you know, Metallica, etc., soundtracking Mission Impossible 2. You know, that's always going to be an enmeshed process. But the idea of bringing ears to, you know, an artist perhaps who's fallen out or hasn't made it into the big times, or, you know, has basically the big times have passed about by, or whatever, you know, that Moby undeniably, if not created that idea and that concept, then definitely formulated it as they honed it to a winning formula. Absolutely. And this album changed how music is packaged and released and marketed.
Yeah. And it all started because I listened to a soundtrack from 1997 to The Saint, a 3 out of 4 star movie most people have forgotten. Although I do like that, and I do like the score. Although you can get the soundtrack for cheap, the score will cost you about a Benjamin, because it instantly sold out its first. Well, I don't think it say it instantly. It made like a few thousand copies. They sold out, and now, like, if you want it, you got to buy the physical copy for a lot, because there's not a lot of them. And I'm sad my copy of the score got. Graham Revell, one of the most underrated composers of the late 90s, love him, but did not attract a lot of audience.
No, and obviously that's why it's a bit a limited release. But you know, I have a respect for this album. I feel it is overly baggy. I feel it is, particularly in its latter third, is a more difficult listen than sort of up to the first 2/3 of it. But I have and obviously Moby has now become like I hesitate to say pariah, but you know, I can't imagine a lot of people openly outside of, like, you know, the Moby sphere going, I'm a Moby fan. You know, that's it, you know, you don't get that. You know,
I've been shy about it. I mentioned it a couple times, and I've just been like, I kind of like Moby, and it's just like, So I had to talk about it, which is why I chose this over a lot of probably better albums, probably a lot of better people, probably about more famous things. But it's just like I had to deal with this and move on.
Yeah, definitely.
Or if not move on, just recognize that this is here.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel you can't really tell a story of, you know, late or basically 90s music without, you know, talking about this record.
Yeah.
Cool. So where are we headed next? So shall I reveal the other anniversary episodes for this year? I think.
Go ahead.
So obviously we have done Play. This is you know, obviously our first anniversary episode of the year. Next up is The Killer's Hot Fuss. That will be on June 7th. Following that will be Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys on 25th July. 2 days later, we'll be celebrating 40 years of Metallica's Ride the Lightning on the 27th of July. 25 years of Portishead's Dummy on the 22nd of August. There's a lot of 25-year ones. I mean, this is like, considering how stacked 1984 is, the fact that we've only got one album from 1984 is... I mean, this is like, compared to last year, this was a very difficult process. The Nine Inch Nails, The Fragile on the 21st of September, and bringing up the rear on the 30th of November, we'll be talking about the 45th anniversary of Pink Floyd's The Wall. Which means Moby will not be the most controversial person we talk about this year.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. It's time to talk about Roger Waters again. Oh God. And I believe we will have a guest for the Paul's Boutique episode, which will be revealed later.
Maybe a guest later, but right now we only have one guest for one thing.
Yes. Yes, we anyway, this has been an interesting dive through late 90s electronica. Which only leaves one thing to say, which is, our social medias. We can be found on Twitter at NotSoFinalProd and on Patreon at the Thom and Joe Show. Tom is spelled with a H. Which does leave us with only one thing to say, which is nobody cares, Moby.
Nobody.
Nobody. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Sit down another tender celebrity. You ate Moby. No, I didn't. You sure about that? Am I sure? Moltar, I think I'd know if I ate a guest, okay? Now sit him out.
Here, me.
You like D&D, Audrey Hepburn, Fangoria, Harry Houdini, and croquet. You can't swim, you can't dance, and you don't know karate. Face it, you're never gonna make it.
I don't want to make it. I just wanna.